Hello everybody. This video assumes that you've already watched the video from North Carolina State University about good literature reviews and what literature review means. It also assumes that you've watched the Zotero tutorials and done the Zotero tutorials. So if you haven't done those things, really stop this video and go do those before you come back to this video. What this video is going to be about is about how to do effective searching. The effective search strategies that we're going to recommend are based on this idea from the North Carolina State tutorial that the literature really looks like a web. So somebody has an idea, a big idea, a major work, and they publish the article. It becomes well known, and other people cite that article and build their work upon the ideas and findings from that original source. And those new ideas often lead to other new ideas and other major works that become foundations in and of themselves. And it's all a web. And this is why citing literature and why we have APA references and why all of that is so tightly defined. And it's because the existence of citations allows people to move backwards and forwards through the literature by following the citations. And so the strategies we're going to recommend have to do with tracing citations, going backwards, and also going forward. So the going forward is probably going to be a new idea for you. Right, a couple things come up from this idea that really point to a couple misconceptions we want to dispel. The first one is that newer is always better. In fact, we constantly hear students saying that professors tell them they only want articles within the last 5 years. Well, that might be an appropriate recommendation if what you're trying to do is just find out what people are currently saying is best practice. But it isn't a good strategy when you're doing a literature review where the idea is to have a good overall understanding of your topic. Let's pretend for a second that this picture here represents these two gray boxes being articles written in the last 5 years. But they're built on a major work that came from 1990. And really, if you don't know the original work, you're really going to have an incomplete understanding of the newer literature as well. So newer isn't always better, and in fact, these foundational articles are the most important ones that you really want to have in your literature review. So newer isn't always better. The second misconception is that you search, or the literature looks like a stack. It's just a list of books, it's just a list of articles, and so we present them one by one, we look them up one by one in a list fashion. Both of those ideas are wrong. It's not a list, it's a web. And so we're going to use one article to find another and this article to find another. All right? These two concepts relate to part of the way that we're going to evaluate your literature review, and specifically these two rows, which were adapted from Boot and Beal. The first row talks about thoroughness of literature citation. Well, there's no way you can thoroughly review the citations in your topic unless you do this tracing, going from one article to another to find out who is saying which articles are important. So that's what we really mean here when we say demonstrates good tracing of citation and selection of most relevant literature. So going back to this picture here, good tracing means you took this article and you found this article, and you used this article and you found this article. And most relevant literature means you're figuring out what these major works are and which are the important studies that came from them. The second row here is that you synthesize the literature. So in your literature review, you're not going to want to say the first article is this, and the second article is this, and the third article is this, and just report on everything you find. You don't want to write a paragraph for each article. Instead, you want to find the themes, which often mirror the themes in the way the literature developed, but not always. But you want to find themes and then organize your literature by themes when you do the writing process. All right, so this means that we're going to really recommend 3 strategies for how you do effective searching. The first is to find some of these foundational articles, the big red ones here, that others built on, and use Google Scholar to trace forward. I'll explain that in a second. And the second and third one is to find more current articles that have extensive list of citations and use the reference lists in those articles to trace backwards in time. Now, there is such, even though we're going to be talking about doing all this tracing and using the references and citations, it doesn't mean that you never do search by topic. You almost always are going to start your search for a topic by using a keyword in a tool like EBSCOhost or Google Scholar. So you're going to start as, if your topic is co-teaching, you're just going to do a search for co-teaching. You've got to start somewhere. And the goal is start somewhere, find something good, and then start tracing from there. The main strategies are going to be these. And I'm going to demonstrate these now, and I want you to practice each one before you get together with your group, because you're going to have to do these when you're together with your group, and you don't want to be trying to figure them out for the first time with your group. All right. First one is find highly cited articles from the past, those big foundational articles. Use Google Scholar to do this. All right, and we're going to have you practice this before you get together in your group. All right, so I've got Google Scholar already up. You can Google Scholar, scholar.google.com. We've got links to it in D2L, or you can just do a Google search for Google Scholar. Google Scholar is not the regular Google search engine, but it's one of their specialized search engines. All right, so I did a search, keyword search for co-teaching, and I get these articles. Now, the way I can tell, or at least get an indication, that one of these articles might be a key article is by the publication date and how many people have cited it. So this is the amazing thing about Google Scholar, is that it actually has cataloged everybody since 1995. In other words, going forward in time from 1995 that cited this book by Cook and Friend. Well, 533 people have thought enough of this book since 1995 to cite it when they publish an article on whatever they're doing. Now, many of these may not even be about co-teaching. They might be about ancillary topics that have something indirectly to do with co-teaching. But the fact that 533 published sources have cited this tells me it's probably a pretty foundational article, and the fact that it's from 1995 means that, you know, it has been recognized since 1995 as an important source, and it's probably one that I would want to look at. Now, how do you trace forward? Well, here's the really totally cool thing. You can click Cited By, and these are all the different sources that have cited that article or that book since 1995. Now, a couple things about this. First of all, Cook and Friend, how did they cite it in 1992? That's confusing. But we'll ignore that question for a second. As you notice, a lot of these folks that have cited this work have the articles they've written have themselves been highly cited. So that's a pretty strong indicator of quality. Not only was the original book, I just went backwards, cited by 533 different published studies, but the studies that published them themselves are well-known studies. So these are essentially well-known authors saying, hey, Cook and Friend, they're important. Okay? Now, I might start looking at these and reading the abstracts to find relevance. Not all of these are going to be directly on my topic, but when I find ones that are relevant and on my topic, I'm going to probably want to add them to my Zotero collection. Right? All right, so that's the first method. Working forward, tracing it back, finding a foundational article and tracing forward. The next two are really the same idea, and that is finding a meta-analysis article and tracing backwards from that. This is a more current article, and what meta-analysis does is collects and analyzes all of the experimental studies on a particular topic. So I happen to get in my list in co-teaching a meta-analysis article right up number 2. And I actually even have the PDF, which is great. This was in 2001. Ideally, I'd want to find a meta-analysis that's more current than 2001. Because here what I'm trying to do with the meta-analysis is work backwards in time. I want to find the articles that were used in this study, and those are obviously before 2001. So I'm working from backwards in time direction. And so now the more current the meta-analysis I can find, the better. So I'm going to open up the meta-analysis and just show you a couple of things that you want to pay attention to when you're doing this. The goal for you, though, is to find the meta-analysis. And then later you're going to work backwards. All right, so the first thing to say is that, of course, as you might expect, what you're going to do with this is get to the reference list and then start looking up the references. And as I scan this, one thing that jumps out to me is Cook and Friend are cited a couple times. So you want to be on the lookout for these authors' names that keep popping up, because you're not only looking for foundational sources, but often foundational authors. Right? And you can start as a way of building up your collection of sources. Start looking up all the articles in this reference list. So copy Bauer or copy the title here and put it in Google Scholar or put it in EBSCOhost and find that specific article and then add it to your collection. Just go one by one by one. But not all references are created equal. So really what you want to do when you find a meta-analysis is start reading the literature review. And that'll be at the beginning of the article after the abstract. And you can tell from the literature review which sources are probably the most important that you don't want to neglect. And usually those are described up front or in major sections of the literature review. And when I look at the literature review here, again, it's jumping out to me. There's Cook and Friend, there's Friend. I'm going to want to make sure I understand who Cook and Friend are when I do my all my searching. So yes, go to the reference list, start looking them up one by one, but even more important, read the literature review and use that to guide you to which of those references are most important. All right. So the third way that you do it really is the same as the meta-analysis, and that is find a good current article that has a good literature review. Here, more recent is better because you're searching backwards in time, and so you want to have the most recent articles included in the reference list from that article. Now this is exactly the same as the meta-analysis, except you're not limiting yourself to experimental research here. So I can do this by searching by date. I'll pick since 2011 here. And what I want to do is look for full text PDFs that are available to me now because I want to start searching. All right, so I don't know. I'm going to go with this one that says Research on Co-Teaching and Teaming, an untapped resource for induction. The fact that research is in the title makes me think that they're going to have a good review of the literature. It's 2011. I would prefer something more current, but it's not too bad. Notice how I brought it up in EBSCOhost. That's pretty interesting. This is secondary source. In other words, this is somebody that's the purpose of their work is to review other people's work, which is the same thing you're doing. So maybe this is going to be a great basis for you to start your work. When you get together in your group, you're going to pick a topic, and then you're going to start to search for articles to add to your collection. You don't want to just take the first 10 articles that come up in EBSCOhost, but instead you want to find articles that will help you with this tracing process. Articles that will help you get started with the tracing process, either looking forward or looking backward. This is a different way of doing a search, and so it's going to take you a little bit of persistence in becoming good at it. But once you do, the payoff is really, really good, and that is you're not just finding articles haphazardly, but you're really tracing what people think and what has developed over time about the ideas related to your topic. And that's really what we mean by the literature.